Hello there learners. Welcome to the video in which we are going to discuss the concept of terms of trade and its component. After going through this video, you will be able to understand the concept of terms of trade, know how the terms of trade is calculated, you will be able to know the importance of terms of trade and different types of terms of trade. Now, what does it really mean when you talk about a country's terms of trade or TOT? To simply put, it is the ratio of export prices to the import prices. Terms of trade measures how much imports a country can buy for a unit of its export. It is an index of export price over import price. Imagine a country exporting orange and importing banana. The terms of trade tells us how many oranges can be bought for one banana. Now, what happens when prices shift? If export price rise, a country's terms of trade improves. It can buy more imports for the same amount of exports. But if import price increases, the terms of trade worsen, reducing the purchasing power. Let us assume that India exports oranges and imports of bananas. There may be two scenarios. Scenario 1, when the prices of oranges increase. Suppose there is a global increase in demand for Indian oranges, perhaps due to the health trend or a new orange-based product. This leads to increase in the price of Indian oranges in the international market. With higher orange prices, India can now buy more bananas with the same amount of orange exports. This improved TOT or terms of trade benefits India's economy. This improved terms of trade benefits India's economy. When the price of India's export, that is orange, rises relative to the price of its import, that is bananas, India's terms of trade improves. This means India can buy more bananas for the same amount of oranges. Now, there may be another scenario when the price of banana increases. Imagine a situation of global shortage of bananas, leading to a significant increase in banana prices. Now, India needs to export more oranges to buy the same amount of bananas. This will worsen India's terms of trade, reducing its purchasing power. When the price of India's imports, that is bananas, rises relative to the price of its export, that is oranges, India's terms of trade worsen. This means India can buy fewer bananas for the same amount of oranges. So terms of trade or TOT is expressed as a ratio. The price of export to the price of imports. It answers a crucial question. Can a country sustain its imports based on its exports earning? Can a country sustain its imports based on its export earnings? Mathematically, terms of trade is calculated as the export price index divided by the import price index multiplied by 100. This ratio helps us understanding the exchange rate of goods and services between trading nations. We can take another example. For example, country A is known for its delicious apples, which it exports to other countries. In return, it imports oranges. Initially, the price of one apple is 100 rupees and the price of one oranges is also 100 rupees. Country A exports 10 apples earning 1000 rupees. It uses this money to buy 10 oranges costing 1000 rupees. So if we calculate the terms of trade, we'll get 1000 divided by 1000 into 100 is equal to 100. That is export price divided by import price. Our export price is 1000 and import price is also 1000. So if we calculate the terms of trade, we'll get 100. At this stage, the terms of trade are balanced with a ratio of 100. Now let's say the price of apples increases from 100 rupee to 150 rupee and country A still exports 10 apples, but now the country will earn 1500 rupee, 1500 rupees. With this increased revenue, country A can afford to import more oranges. Instead of just 10, it can now buy 15 oranges. Now if we calculate the terms of trade, we'll get 1500, that is export price divided by import price into 100. If we calculate it, then we'll get 150. So the terms of trade have improved from 100 to 150, meaning country A is in a better trade position. It gets more for what it exports. So now the country can import more with the same amount of export. But what if instead the price of oranges increased from 100 rupee to 200 rupee? Now the cost of importing 10 oranges become 2000 rupee. Country A's export revenue from selling 10 apples is still 1000 rupee, and with the oranges now costing more, that is 200 rupees per oranges, it can only afford 5 oranges. So if we calculate export price divided by import price into 100, that is 1000 divided by 2000, that is we are still earning 1000 rupees by exporting and we have to pay 2000 rupees for our imports. Then if we calculate, we'll get 50. Our terms of trade will be 50. So in this case, the terms of trade have worsened to 50. Country A's trade position is now weaker as it needs to export more apples to afford the same quantity of oranges. Have you wondered what the terms of trade reveals about the country's economic position? Let's dive into the numbers and see what happens when a country's terms of trade fall below 100, reach 100 or go above 100. When the terms of trade are below 100, the situation is not favorable for the country. Why? Because the price of its imports are higher relative to its exports. Now, how it is going to affect the economy? So in this situation, the country must export more goods to afford the same quantity of imports. Again, this could strain the country's resources and lead to trade deficits. And there is a transfer of wealth out of the country, which can hinder economic growth of the country, of the exporting country. The value of exports is just enough to pay for its imports. While this balance is stable, it doesn't provide a cushion for economic uncertainties. Now, how it affects the economy? So in this situation, the country's trade is equilibrium. there will be no significant advantage or disadvantage in terms of trade balance. But when the terms of trade rise above 100, it's a win for the country. The price of its exports are higher than its imports. In this case, fewer exports are needed to buy the same amount of imports, leaving the country with additional resources for investment and growth. Now, how does it affect the economy? The number one, the country can import more goods for the same volume of export if the terms of trade is above 100. This indicates a stronger trade position and it can positively impact economic growth and results of the country. Again, exporting high value goods or services generally leads to such favorable terms. So generally, exporting high value goods or services leads to such favorable terms of trade. So why does terms of trade matter for a country? Because it determines how much a nation can gain from international trade and highlights the impact of global price shift. So understanding terms of trade is key to navigate the complexities of our interconnected economies. Now, we will discuss different concepts of terms of trade. There are several ways to measure and interpret terms of trade. Net barter terms of trade. We also call it commodity terms of trade. So what is it? So it is defined as a ratio of export price to the import prices. So in symbolic term, net barter terms of trade is equal to price of export divided by price of import. Next, gross barter terms of trade. So gross barter terms of trade is the ratio of physical quantity of import to physical quantity of export. In symbolic term, gross barter terms of trade, that is TG is equal to QM divided by Q, where TG is gross barter terms of trade, QM for quantity of import, and QX is quantity of export. That TG divided by TG equal to QM divided by QX. TG divided by QM is equal to QX, where TG is equal to gross barter terms of trade, QM is equal to quantity of imports, and QX is equal to quantity of export. The next is income terms of trade. So income terms of trade is defined as commodity terms of trade multiplied by quantity of export. Symbolically, we can write TY is equal to PX divided by PM into QX, where TY is equal to income terms of trade, PX means price of export, PM means price of import, and QX means volume of export. Then single factor terms of trade. Single factor terms of trade is calculated by multiplying net barter terms of trade with productivity index of domestic export sector. Symbolically, it can be calculated as TS is equal to PX divided by PM into ZX, where TS stands for income terms of trade, PX stands for price of export, PM stands for price of import, and ZX means productivity index of domestic export sector. The next is double factorial terms of trade. So double factorial terms of trade is calculated by multiplying net barter terms of trade with the ratio of factor productivity of domestic industry and foreign export industry. So here we consider one more variable, that is foreign export industry. So if we symbolically put it, it will be like TD is equal to TC into ZX divided by ZM, where TD stands for double factor terms of trade, TC stands for net barter terms of trade, ZX stands for productivity index in the domestic export sector, ZM stands for import productivity index. ZM stands for import productivity index. The next is real cost terms of trade. Real cost terms of trade is measured by multiplying the single factor terms of trade by the index of the amount of disutility. Symbolically, real cost terms of trade can be written as TR is equal to TS into RX, where TR stands for real cost terms of trade, TS stands for single factor terms of trade, RX stands for disutility, real cost in producing export goods. Next is utility terms of trade. The utility terms of trade is calculated by multiplying the real cost terms of trade index with an index of relative average utility of imports and of domestic commodities foregone. Symbolically, the utility terms of trade can be expressed as TU is equal to TR into U. Here, TU stands for utility terms of trade, TR stands for real cost terms of trade index, and U stands for index of relative utility of imports and domestically foregone commodities. So, this was all about the concept of terms of trade, how it is calculated, why it is important, and what are the different types of terms of trade. So we'll conclude here. Thank you for patient listening.